Welcome to Architects of Imagination, a game dev podcast where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. It is my great pleasure to introduce my old friend and co-worker back at Infinity Ward long ago on the Modern Warfare, on the Call of Duty games, as we called him at the time, Smitty, Rich Smith.
Hey, thanks for having me, DJ.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the show. Before we begin, just a couple of orders of business to get through. First of all, the VES nominations are out this week for all the categories, but the real-time nominees were Alan Wake 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Immortals of Avium, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and Mortal Kombat 1. So congrats to all the teams that were nominated. Good luck at the awards gala next month. I hope to see all you guys there. Second order of business too, just a brief mention of a prominent game dev passed in the last 2 weeks. Her name is Janelle Jaquez, and she was a prominent game designer in the early days of Dungeons and Dragons. She worked for Judges Guild. She worked for TSR eventually. Some of her adventures are rated in top 10 lists of best adventures ever made. She went on to make video games, including she was at ColecoVision for a while. She worked on Quake 2 and designed maps at id, and did a ton of other great stuff. A super talented, renowned game designer, Janelle Jaquez, and I happen to be about 8 months into one of her campaigns right now. So our whole crew is bummed about her passing, and condolences go out to her family, to her wife Rebecca. Janelle was an amazing and talented person, so just wanted to give her a little shout out before we begin today.
And that's an incredible lineup of games and things to have worked on. That's crazy.
Yeah, she's super impressive. There's even a design term named for her, Jaquezing the Dungeon. It's called, which is like a lot of D&D adventures kind of leaned into her style of design, which was to make non-linear dungeons that didn't have like a single way, but you can go, there's always like multiple ways to attack a thing. So yeah, she's great. Last order of business before we begin. Today's episode is sponsored by Under a Ton Effects, which is...
Hey, that's your company.
Hey, that's my company. We do visual effects for video games. We've got a little shameless self-promotion this week. We don't usually do this, but we've got a new website out. We've got a new demo reel. I want to show that off real quick, and then we'll move on to talking to Mr. Richard Smith. But check it out. Here is our newest demo reel. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
And it was, I'm sure, choppy playback. We'll edit in,
the full thing.
Yeah.
Man, there's some cool looking games in there. I didn't recognize all of them, so some of them are probably just out or smaller indie projects, right?
Yeah, we wanted to focus on a little bit of stylized stuff this time around. Our last demo reel was mostly realistic stuff. Yeah, we not all of it we have clearance for yet. A lot of the stuff we worked on this last year, but yeah, we were on Mortal Kombat 1, Starfield, Diablo 4, Jedi Survivor, a bunch of cool stuff.
I'm digging it. What are you guys using for simulation these days? Are you doing it in engine, or are you like Houdini, or what?
Yeah, I mean, most of our bread and butter is in engine stuff, right? So a lot of our clients are in Unreal, so that means we're in Niagara a lot of the time.
Yeah.
To make textures for the various to go on the particles, Embergen, Houdini, Photoshop, After Effects. It's just we've got 14 or so of us at the company, so whatever the various artists are comfortable with. I'm a little older, so I still use 3D Studio Max
Oh,
and
you are
Photoshop,
old.
and
Dang.
yeah, Houdini. A lot of the guys, Houdini and Embergen is pretty typical these days.
Yeah. That I've never even cracked Houdini myself, and at this point, I don't think I probably ever will. But it's certainly super impressive.
Yeah,
Um,
you can do amazing stuff in it, and it's making headway into games quite a bit too. Not long ago it was mainly used for film effects, but a
yeah.
ton of game companies are picking it up. Universities are starting to teach it now in game programs. So yeah, it's making headway.
What's that voxelized file format, VDB or something like that, that does that's is that a kind of way to move data from something like Houdini over into games?
Yeah, it's mainly an interchange format. Like it sort of started as an interchange format between applications. So you could bring um, even within Houdini, you could like do a simulation and save a
Yeah.
VDB and kind of bring it back in
Yeah.
and manipulate it. Or you can transfer data between Houdini and Maya. But yeah, these days you can import VDBs right into Unreal Engine.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I
Something,
played around it briefly in Blender to try out, like, bringing in clouds and stuff that's got some fidelity baked into it with the VDBs. It's pretty cool.
yeah, and game engines are starting to be able to render volumetrics like that. A gentleman at Epic named Ryan Brooks, who's one of their tech artists, who's super amazing, talented guy. He's got some tutorials on his blog for how to create Raymart shaders so that you can like in engine kind of beautifully light and render
Yeah.
volumetrics. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. And now Unreal Engine can handle fluids as well. I've started in one of the unannounced projects we're working on right now. I've been doing some fluid sims in engine, not even like simulated offline, which is
That's
crazy.
hardcore. That's super hardcore.
Yeah,
Like that's where it's all going. Is everything that has to be baked out now is going to be real time soon, right?
yeah. I mean, the video cards just keep getting faster. The computers, and I think about a lot of the elements of rendering in real time are not too different between like video games and movies these days, like
Yeah,
character rendering, subsurface scattering, the eye shaders. You can basically do anything in film there you can do in a game engine now. Environments and environment lighting look just phenomenal in Unreal Engine. um, but
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
effects
that's
is
how.
still kind of like we don't have a render farm in 3 days to pull off these crazy simulations. So like we're starting to eke in some of it, but like I feel like that there's going to be a long trail to that where it's not going to be 10 years for us to catch up to where film are today. It's it'll keep evolving over the next 20, 30, 50 years.
I mean, they still have run to go too. I think movies are still continuing to look better year to year. I think
Yeah,
it's much more about the intention than it is about the technical limitations. Like Jurassic Park was built around the technical limitations to make it look as good as it could with what could be done. And I think it's kind of like you can do a lot of stuff now. It's more, yeah, there's some stuff that just still it's hard. I think the real 3D photoreal human characters that's an actor still is not a thing yet. Like that's still been the biggest nut to crack. Um, and it's still like there's a lot you sometimes you see in the Marvel stuff. You're like, oh, they really thought they did it this time.
Yeah.
But like with this, like the Star Wars, like the Grand Moff Tarkin or whatever, like it's like, still getting the creepy vibes off of that guy.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty fine for like digit doubles and stunts and
Yeah,
sort of quick action
yeah,
stuff, but
far away.
like right up in your face performances are it's tricky. Yeah, I remember seeing, some online stuff about like, one of the, I don't know, Mandalorian or one of the new Star Wars shows where, someone kind of like deep faked it and it looked better than like the thing. And here's like one interesting thing too is like that is making its way into game engines as well. Like
Hmm.
Nvidia's showed off like
Hmm.
style transfer stuff. Like think of this. Imagine, game engines where we're not trying to necessarily render the super high fidelity stuff. We're just rendering kind of like blocky, like proxy stuff, and letting like kind of a style transfer deepfake like fill in all the beauty and the detail from there.
Yeah,
Like that's probably not far off.
it isn't far off, and I think probably another angle to look at that from is just like, what if you rendered at quarter resolution and allowed AI upsampling to fill in the blanks? Like that's probably the safe. It's like the safest bet in a weird way because we know that upsampling looks really good, and we know that it's really getting to be a kind of near real time type tech. I've seen some really cool stuff, and it's like these very tuned models, right? So tuned to specifically remove noise and upsample specifically computer generated images with like ray tracing, where it's like super noisy. If you ever seen, you've probably seen 2 Minute Papers,
Yeah.
who's like the guy for the breaking stuff on in the tech world. Like I follow a bunch of different YouTubers that talk about AI in a general sense. Is usually like, this is the latest video, text to video, or this is the latest image to, and that stuff is really fun to see as well. So between those, like this just came out, check it out, people, and the 2 Minute Papers guy who's like, this isn't going to be out for a year or more, but this is the bleeding edge. I feel like that's a pretty. I got pretty good coverage on the stuff that's like just about to crest the horizon, and it's just like what you would imagine. Like everything gets a little easier and everything looks a little better. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing time. Like you always feel like, oh my god, we've come so far, and now we're 4K rendering and everything looks super beautiful. But like, no, it's gonna keep getting like a lot
there's a,
better.
there's a ways to go. Whereas movies, I think, are really at the upper end of the bell curve. They're eking out like just the slightest bit of visual improvement. Um, Games is right in that fat middle of the bell curve where they're not going straight up. It isn't like Quake 1 to Quake 2 or whatever, where it's like, holy
Yeah,
shit, it's like 100 times better looking.
yeah,
Those days are past, I think, but there's still a lot. And it's like film has always been like the older brother, right? So you can look and see like what he's been up to, and it gives you a good metric. Be like, okay, that's like we games past Jurassic Park a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like in terms of just straight capacity to render. I don't know where we're at, if we're at Scorpion King or what,
I
but
know.
we got a little. There is a little bit of There's always a little bit of distance, right? But we're both
Yeah,
kind of like, if photorealism is at the top of the bell curve and movies are here, we're kind of like coming up behind them, and a little bit drafting their speed because they're doing a lot of the figuring out for us. But now with like the Mandalorian and stuff, there's also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I see a lot of linear entertainment taking its cues from interactive, even on a story level. Just like the way that their stories are structured, start being like, hey, this is like a video game story that I'm watching right now.
yeah,
And I'm sure that that's not entirely just a figment of my imagination. I think they're seeing it too, that the audience that they want to get now is the people that are playing video games all the time. So they want to grab those people and speak to them in a way that they're interested.
yeah. And another trend I'm noticing too these days is like. Like it's sort of the trickle down effect in movies, not to use an overplayed term, but like, you know it used to be just big blockbuster movies that would have like great effects and visuals, and now
Yeah,
you've got like, every damn TV show has pretty killer. Like it is impressive, like
yeah,
some of the like visuals and effects you can see in just standard like half an hour TV shows these days.
yeah. The bar for, I mean, first Battlestar Galactica and then The Expanse, um, were like the vanguards of the next tier of like space CG in TV shows, because that's like that I think is the lowest hanging fruit, right? You just have like these chunky physical objects that don't need to really be that articulated, and the lighting is all fairly straightforward. So there's a lot of pluses. Then that's why you see like back in the day, like Star Trek with the early CG, like the Picard years or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, that looked really good at the time. We're like, holy my god, I'm watching like real space stuff on TV. Was a new feeling, and yeah, that's just continuing with the like the that fidelity bar keep going up, and now it's digging into like the Mandalorian. Obviously, blew everybody away. That one was like
yeah,
that one was like I need to learn, and I want to be in one of those volumes at some point in my career. I want to like be sitting there placing buildings and mountains and seeing the result of that in real time with actors and stuff. It just seems so cool. And now I don't know if I'll actually do that, but it's pretty rad. It's weird that I thought that was going to be like, okay, that's just how it's done from now on. Everyone's going to do it like the Mandalorian because it looks amazing. But man, when it isn't done as artfully as the Mandalorian is, you can see it. You see the
yeah.
artifacts and it's like, oh, you guys didn't know quite how to handle this thing as well as the first people that tried it, because they were the innovators, and so they had the most like comprehensive understanding of it, even though they were the first ones. And now it's a bit like, okay, either it looks really good and you don't notice, or you kind of notice and it's like, oh, there's the line, there's where the set ends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've even been getting hit up a little bit for virtual production work, that which is not our bread, and we haven't done any yet. It's none
Yeah,
of them have sort
but
of
that
come.
overlap is there.
Yeah, because like yeah, the one sets and lighting. I think virtual production has some definite strengths, right? Like you can have a golden hour forever, and lighting environments are pretty straight ahead to make look great on a set like that. But effects is still tricky, like to get fires and like in games, even in AAA games these days, it doesn't match the fidelity that you're going to see in TV or film, but so people like us that are experts in that.
So
That's
in TV and film, they're probably rarely simulating fire unless it's
it's
for like a
composited. Yeah, a
it's
lot of it.
composited, because it's like that's how you get the most authenticity, and it's not that hard to do it that way.
Yeah,
And yeah, fire especially. Maybe that's why it's like I don't know if you've ever been like sitting around a campfire and you just kind of, you know, just staring into it, and it's kind of like, man, this is like the original TV show. Like,
yeah.
it's fascinating. It's like never the
Mesmerizing.
same, but it's always of a type, you know. And it's like there no shape is like permanent. Everything is in motion, but um, I love it. Yeah, I mean, but that seems like a very like you're right. It's rare that I don't think I've ever seen a photoreal simulated fire that I can think of.
Yeah, we I still kind of favor filmed footage over time.
Yeah,
Depending on a lot of people like to simulate stuff these days. Back at
you could
iDub,
do like a you could do like a hybrid where you're using particles with movies on them, right? Of
yeah, that's
elements of
that's what I
fire.
tend to lean towards too. We even have a fire pack out that is
Oh,
exactly
nice.
that. It is filmed on four like what a red
You
camera.
heard it. You heard it here, folks. Go get your
So
fire pack.
we jumped right in. We skipped over the introduce Rich
Yeah.
part.
Okay. Do you want to bring back some structural rigor to the
Yeah,
conversation? What? Like, where's your drink though, Dave? Because here's mine. You told me to bring one, and now
yeah,
I
I've got
have.
one right
Here it is.
here.
Okay.
Cheers. Here we go.
Cheers. Cheers.
Let's do this.
Okay, where is it? Here we are. Cheers.
So this is Richard Smith, everybody. A human that I just adore. I've had so many fun times hanging out at his house and at the conferences and at work. A lot of laughter has been had. We worked together in Infinity Ward before that. Rich was the lead environment artist at Electronic Arts, where he worked on, among other things, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth and Command and Conquer General Zero Hour. After IDub, which he worked on Call of Duty 2, Modern Warfare 1 and 2. He went on to be a senior artist at Respawn, an art director at Spark, a then co-founder of a game studio and creative director at Tangent Games, and is currently at Netflix as an art director. How's it going at Netflix? What are you guys up to there?
Um, it's pretty cool. I will say that I'm really enjoying being at Netflix. It's interesting because they are a tech company that's fully embracing games. They're not a tech company; they're a media company at this point. I think that's kind of like their big their big move that was different than um, other groups that were in that mode. They were like, no, we're gonna be making our own stuff and all that. Um, but games is still relatively new for them, and I've seen other big companies tackle games in a kind of more oh, we already know everything about this way. I don't know, like I don't want to call out Stadia, but certainly that seems like one of them where it was just like you guys didn't really think of this from the point of view of the gamer. You kind
Yeah,
of took you were like you're a tech company and you looked at it as a tech problem, but nobody wants to play a platform that doesn't have games on it fundamentally, right? Um,
yeah,
so yeah, like Netflix is cool that way. They did some impressive moves before I got there in terms of setting up their games division to be filled with veteran developers in the decision making roles all up and down the chain. So like
right.
you were at EA, right? And we've been at Activision and so on. Like at a certain point in the up the food chain, you stop talking to developers and start talking to suits,
Yeah,
and it's pretty quick. And those people really don't know or care about games on a structural level all that much. But what's really impressed me with me about Netflix, other than the company as a whole, which is I think its own conversation, but just the fact that they filled all those decision making roles up the chain on the game side to be like they're all devs, which is very relaxing for me. Like I'm like I get these people. I know
nice.
exactly. I know what they're like. They're very much more accomplished than I am, but I understand how they got where they were, and so I think that's really cool.
Awesome. That bodes well. And I assume whatever you're working on is not announced yet, and you can't get any specifics about that.
Yeah, I can't really talk about what we're working on. And I can only say I think probably I don't really know what I can say exactly, but I think that it's safe to say that I'm working on an internal project. That internal development is a part of the strategy for Netflix, and so the external development is more visible because it has to do with like acquisitions and kind of publicly announced stuff. Internal is its own thing, and it's robust. And some people that I think both of us know are on other teams in that group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's pivot and talk about this last year has been kind of a strange one for the game industry. There's, every given year there's a certain amount of layoffs and studio closures. 2023 was just brutal, just layoffs, not
Yeah.
just in the tech sector, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, but games too got hit really hard. Riot just had a big 530-person layoff this week. Epic had a I don't know what is it. I can't remember the numbers, but massive. This is unusually large. Can you talk about what's your impressions on the layoffs of 2023? What is the outlook for this next year coming up? What do you think's behind all that?
Um, I think what's behind I mean, I first of all, I'm not. This is just like you could almost be more informed than me just by watching more YouTube videos than I do.
Yeah. Total
But with
speculation.
that caveat that I don't know what I'm talking about, um, I think it's a two thing. It's two sided. Like one is that when COVID hit, basically everybody in the world had nothing to do but play video games if they were lucky, um, and um, and so there was a lot of video game playing being done, and so the charts were going nuts, and so all the companies were like, we need to support this growth, and so we're going to hire to do it, and so they hired a lot. They hired a lot, and and then when COVID thawed out and we kind of got the hangover economically from all the um, I think properly spent money that we spent to reduce the impact of COVID. There is still a little bit of a price to be paid, and we're kind of feeling that echo in inflation. And so when money is cheap, as they say, when the interest rate is low, that incentivizes companies to spend. And so the interest rates are not low anymore, and so companies are feeling that sting and they're reacting to it. And I think that's the macro level. It's not very reassuring or particularly meaningful to someone who lost their job recently. Like,
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this. Um, it absolutely sucks to get laid off, and it absolutely sucks to get laid off for no fault of your own through kind of macro scale changes that you could never have prevented. Um, but there is an opportunity here with so much talent in the market right now to get together in groups of 5 or 7 or 3, has to be odd numbers
Yeah.
to go make something, because it's probably like the best thing you could do with your time while you're looking for work is to get with some friends and make something. It doesn't have to ever go anywhere, because that work is going to be more impressive to whoever it is that you're looking for a job from than just working on a portfolio, in my opinion. So I think that there is a little bit of a silver lining. Obviously, it's not going to pay the rent, and you got to do what you got to do to pay the rent. But if you have the opportunity, you should try and get together with friends and come up with something and pitch it, because the larger scale is that I think that video games are fundamentally the entertainment sector that will continue to grow for a couple more decades easy. I mean, I just don't know what the world will look like in 20 years. So how would you know after that? But in the short term, in that sort of short term, games are going to continue to gobble up linear entertainment in terms of people's hours. And so if you're a game developer, even though now is a really shitty time to be a game developer, if you look a little bit into the future, you'll see that you're still in an industry that is going to keep growing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Another thing we are talking about just before we started too is sort of like the splatter effect of sometimes when events like this occur, you get sort of new studios and industries spawning out of bigger ones too. Like
Yeah.
I think of in Texas, Origin and Richard Garriott, they spawned a whole game dev community out there. I wonder if in Raleigh now, Epic's, they're huge. They just laid off a lot of people. I could easily see a ton of new companies sort of springing up around Raleigh, and it kind of becoming a new like game dev hub outside of Epic's presence there.
Yeah, like I mean, with the latest one being Riot's layoffs, like I'll eat my hat if there isn't at least one startup that comes out of that. You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean? Because you're just like, how many talented people are just hanging out all of a sudden? Like they're gonna make some stuff. And yeah, Raleigh, and like that, like you said, like it's kind of, there is a kind of a geographic quality to it where it creates new nexuses of businesses that don't happen when it's just one big company, no matter how big it is. Like there needs to be this kind of like dropping seeds phase where the company gets so big that they just naturally are sloughing off super talented people that go and make their own stuff because they're so driven.
Yeah, yeah. Um, on a lighter note, moving on from the darker news of 2023, let's turn a little brighter. You worked on a lot of amazing projects at a lot of amazing companies. Tell us, do you have a moment, a game, a place that you're sort of most proud of all the work that you've done?
Um, I think probably the game I'm most proud of is the one that did the least well,
Yeah.
which is Here They Lie. It did fine, but we made a mobile. We made a VR game for the PSVR, so it was like there was a limit to how that was going to do. Um, but it was the first time that I ever got to make something that I felt like was a direct expression of my interest. Like everything else has been like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I can do that. We'll do that. Let's go with that. I know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like a kind of, I understand what the order is, and I can deliver it kind of idea. Versus like this is in my heart what I want to be making right now, and it's a different feeling, and it's one that, having felt it, I definitely want to keep chasing because it's a different level of commitment. It's a bit like what you hear about independent artists, like painters and stuff, where they are just like sitting there with their canvas and they say, okay, this is the thing I'm going to make today, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. It isn't really like that egocentric, and there is like obviously collaboration is always a part of it, but um, that sense of really asking yourself very specifically, if it was me, because now it is, what would I
Yeah.
make? And and when it's intoxicating, to actually be able to engage with that. So that one was the one that really did it for me, and I'm still the game that I'm most proud of having worked on. It isn't the game I had the most fun working on. I think the most fun I ever had was back in the IW days making Call of Duty and Modern Warfare, um, with you and the rest of the team, because that one was like, it was like pure adrenaline. Like everybody was in their mid to late 20s, and some of them were younger, and we're all just kind of like super charged for everything. And then to work on something that ended up being like this, like super jumbo colossal hit was like, it's not something that was like I should, it wasn't anything I did that made it a colossal hit. So like it's really nice to have been a part of that roller coaster. Very fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. That was a fucking moment in time, wasn't it? I remember too when I first started. Like I had just worked at Bungie before that on Halo 3, and there was kind of a running joke too, like Call of Duty 2 had shipped, which I loved. I played it. It's I don't play a lot of games start to end anymore, but COD 2 I did, and I thought it
Yeah,
was brilliant. I thought it was fucking amazing. And so I came right at the end of Modern Warfare 1, and I remember there was kind of a running joke that Lastimosa, some of the guys were like, "Yeah, we're gonna fucking crush Halo." Like we're they were cocky, right? They're like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a cockiness for sure.
yeah, y'all knew you had fucking gold on your hands,
Yeah.
and I had just started, and like even in like meetings, they'd be like, "Yeah, we're gonna fucking kill Halo." I'm like, and every time they're like, "Oh, sorry, DJ," like I had just
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's how
Um,
it goes.
and I had no idea as well. Like, well, I remember on my interview, I played Modern Warfare 1 multiplayer a little bit. I'm like, and, I was a Halo fanboy. I'm like, man, you die really fast in this. I didn't quite get it, but man, after it shipped and we were playing it, and like, fucking A, if it didn't take off at the right place at the right time. And that was a fun production too. There's some hilarious characters in there. There's fucking shenanigans going on
Yeah,
all
there
over the
was a lot
place.
of shenanigans. I think there's some that really you
Shouldn't.
couldn't necessarily put proper names to the people involved in them without,
Yeah,
without
for
some
legal
sort of recourse. Yeah, it's like I don't. Yeah, they had a monthly party, right? Like every month
Yeah.
we would all get down, and it's like that wasn't normal. I don't think I've ever been to a company that had that going down after that. But
Yeah,
you know,
I remember the quips thing. So one thing that was lovely at Infinity Ward is at the end of each game they'd make a yearbook, and it was just all the photos from the monthly parties that we've had,
hmm
and in the bug tracking system, I forget what it was called even. There was a little like quips field you could enter, like somebody said some funny or stupid shit. You could like
yeah,
type it
you can
into.
put it in.
And so whenever you went to file a bug, you would read some like hilarious shit at the end, and then they published that in the yearbook, like all of the, and I've got it sitting right over there. But
I only seem to have kept one of those. I think it was for Modern Warfare, but it might have been Modern Warfare 2.
yeah, I
Um,
think they did that in both Modern Warfare 1 and 2. They stopped that practice after that, maybe for HR reasons.
I get the sense that the vibe turned a little more serious after everything went down. Um,
Yeah, it did. So you left after Modern Warfare 2, and with about half the company went on to form Respawn, and where you worked on Titanfall after that, which is a beloved fucking awesome game.
yeah, that was fun too, man. That was when I realized that what I really wanted to do is be an art director, and it was worth going off and trying to set my own sail to see if I could do that.
Talk,
Because I
talk
was
about that.
working on a game. I was working on a game that I wanted to say what the game should be like,
Yeah.
and it was just not my job to do that. And so it was like, okay, I got to go find that job so I can do that.
So you ended up at Spark as an art director, and then at Tangent, where you're creative director. Where you like. I mean that game, Here They Lie. You had a major hand in what it was and its look and those sort of themes. Talk about your transition from production artist to art director. How did you make that leap? Not everyone is able to do that. Do you have an advice for people who want to make that leap? And then again, from art director to creative director.
Yeah, I mean, I think the creative director role might have been. I mean, in the sense that we were a startup that started off with four or five people, um, like four developers. That under those very kind of egalitarian, nobody's getting paid kind of things. It's like, well, yeah,
Yeah,
we're all founders. We're gonna have the same status on some level.
yeah,
But the reality is, I was an art director, but I was an art director that I had a fairly free hand to kind of drive the look of things. But I never have been a very accomplished designer. I have a lot of opinions. Like there's, and I sometimes I suffer from giving those opinions too much. But fundamentally, like games isn't as interesting to me as visuals are, regardless of whether it's in games or not. So in that stance, like there's no point in me having a real strong like design opinion. But I'll give it anyways, But I'm willing to secede most, even if I don't agree with it, that's fine. Like I'm not. That's not really my gig. But yeah, I love the art, and yeah, I mean, Tangent was great. It used to be the Ten Gentlemen, and we dropped the Gentleman.
yeah.
Um,
Which was a cool
Spark
name.
was crazy because it was like I had just never done it before, and so I was kind of winging it. You know, the fake it till you make it thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I've pretty well embodied that idea mentally. Like I'm just like, yes, that is what I will do. I will fake it until I make it. So I usually say like I'm going to do something, and in my mind I'm like, how am I going to do that? But I'm usually kind of confident that I'll figure it out. Um, and that's kind of how it was at Spark. And it was a great team, and a lot of the people that I worked with are lifelong friends now, and so I'm really happy about that. It was a weird relationship with Japanese developers,
Yeah.
or the
You were on
specific.
Ninja Gaiden Z there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Ninja Gaiden Z. Um, but and I got to go to Japan as a result of it too, which I'd never been to Japan. So it was like it's all thumbs up for me. But I think a lot of people had to suffer from my greenness.
Yeah.
and just see me learn how to do the job in real time while they all were affected by my failings. That's kind of the reality of it, if I'm being honest. So, like, well, I screwed that up, and everyone has to work harder because of it. So that's too bad.
Well, I mean, I regard you as a super talented artist, and also like I love seeing that you're. I mean, you continue to do like life drawing, and post that pretty regularly. I think you're a tremendous artist. Tell us like if you could sort of go back and give yourself some advice from when you started on Ninja Gaiden Z to what you know now. What would you?
Um, I would say don't convince yourself that you're too cool to learn the soft skills, like how to manage people and how to treat people appropriately that think very differently than you do. That was kind of my assumption going in. It's like, as long as I treat people the way I would want to be treated, then I'm doing fine. And that's okay when you're a 3D modeler, because that's just being polite. But when you're an art director, you need to understand that there are really very, very different types of people, um, kind of structurally, how they think, what makes them satisfied, what makes them nervous. It's just very, very different. And if you don't recognize that, if you don't take into account the reality that you should be thinking about how other people are going to react to what you say and not just measuring it against what you'd like to hear, you're gonna get some people pretty frustrated, and you're not going to get the best work out of them. So I've definitely learned that. I think to some degree, I'm trying to keep living that lesson. But what else? I guess trust yourself, but that's lame. Like if you're like, hey buddy, you go back in your time machine, you step out, and you're like, hey,
You're
Greg,
great.
you should trust yourself more. And I'll be like, you got fat. That would be past self. Yeah, be like, why am I listening to you, old man? Yeah, that's probably the conversation how it would go down. Um,
Yeah. So leaning into like talking about soft skills too, like I learned some hard lessons as well. Like
hard lessons and soft skills.
after the respawn split, I became lead, and I was at Infinity Ward for a decade or so, and yeah, as we grew and I had more people reporting to us, like I talked about this a ton, but my last project there was pretty rough. It was a difficult production. I had people frustrated with me. I was frustrated with people. I had to fire a person or two, put people on pips, and like most of us don't get into games to be a middle manager, right? Like we like making cool stuff. So like, you know, I I cared about it and I pried it. I tried to learn and I read a lot and I wanted to be a fucking awesome boss. But yeah, I fucked up. I did some things, like yeah, there's growth to be had when you sort of advance up the ranks that you're not always ready for.
Yeah, and I think that what you said is totally true. You're going to regret some of the things you did on the way to learning how to be better at them.
Yeah.
Um, and the only people that the one, I guess the saving grace there is that, um, the only people that don't have that happen are either kind of narcissistic psychopaths or the kind of one in a million geniuses, right? Like, I don't consider myself to be a one in a million genius. And so if I screw up, it's just like the important thing is to recognize that it happened and try and figure out how you might not do it again. But like, you're just going to screw up. It's just going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
I think one lesson that I could tell myself, ways to do better looking back. I would say, like listen more. Like people will tell you
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're upset with, what
Yeah.
they want, and like just be as accommodating as you can. Like if someone doesn't like your style of critique or aspires to a new position, even though it was, they're like, fucking find a way to make it happen. Like try to support and promote and grow people, and like get if they are telling you they want thing, like give them thing if you can, if it's within your power.
Yeah, I think that that's very very true, and it's not easy to always do that. And I think there's a I would say personally in the hopefully in the past, like if something I'll like translate what people are saying to something that makes sense to what my concerns are. So like if you can halt that kind of thought process and just be like, I'm gonna just listen. And the other thing is like trying to jump to the solution is an issue too. Like, oh, this person's talking about a problem. I know the fix to that problem. I'll just start doing that. It's like, no, the thing right now is just to hear what they're saying. And a lot of times, having someone listen to what it is you're concerned about is really the only thing that needed to happen, because there isn't an obvious fix. It's just like, yes, I recognize that's an issue, and you don't need to like pretend like it isn't. We both get it. Is a pretty powerful, but also fairly free thing to do for somebody.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I want to talk a little bit with you about just inspiration. What are you drawing inspiration from these days? What are you seeing that's like, oh fuck, that's so cool. Like I want to like, you know, meld that into my process. What's inspiring you right now?
I,
Games, movies, anything?
yeah, I mean, I try to, you know, I watch a ton of YouTube and I watch a lot of movies. I don't play that many games. The games I am playing, I do find very inspirational, but like it's like overcooked. And playing a lot of board games. So these fairly lo-fi experiences, but it taps into what I actually think is kind of interesting about video games, which is that the really interesting stuff is happening on the other end of the controller with the player. Like you can put as much. I guess I'm not convinced that games are the best way to tell linear narratives. I will say that. Like I just don't. It's fine. You basically it becomes a cookie for successfully playing the interactive part of a game. You do some interacting and then you get a cookie and then you do some more interacting, but like none of that's as cool as seeing my kids say, okay, you chop the tomatoes and bring them to me, and then it's like that kind of like the conversational loop of what people are doing in with the game is the like the table, the format, um, is just so much more engaging to me. Like, and that kind of is drawing me towards games where there's a lot of interaction between real people. Um, I don't. There's some master craftsmen designers, but I don't really want to spend my time trying to figure out what a designer thought the right thing for me to do at a given moment was. Like I just, I'll turn it
Yeah,
off and I'll go watch your YouTube.
yeah,
So it's like the games that don't do that are the ones that I'm really jazzed about. I study a lot about architecture for some reason. This is like a late in life interest of mine. Um, and then yeah, like photography is a tool for teaching myself composition. Um, I love going to new places and just walking around and taking pictures. I find that like enormous. Like I can imagine a retirement that's like a one third that
yeah.
just going to new places, walking around, taking pictures, and then eating at nice restaurants would probably do me pretty good.
Yes. Do you have
Doesn't that sound pretty good?
that sounds fucking awesome. Do you have a
Yeah.
spot you want to go next? Do you guys have any travel plans coming up in the future?
The family wants to go to Japan because they didn't go, and I got to go, and I'm always talking cool stories about it. I
Where did
think
you get to go in Japan? Kyoto to Tokyo?
just Tokyo too, just Tokyo. So
Get to Kyoto.
there's a very reasonable argument to be made for going to Japan and going only sometime in Tokyo and other times the rest of the awesome country. Like I want to see Kyoto.
Yeah.
I'd love to get up into the mountains and stuff. So there is a ton of stuff there, obviously, um, and that would appeal to me. I think I went to Spain um, a, 4 5 or 6 years ago, and that was like the first time that I realized there's places where you can get amazing food literally everywhere you go. Like, um, you just, if you stopped off at a gas station and they were serving food, it would be the best meal you had in the U.S. And that's kind of a bummer that
Yeah,
we don't have that. But it's really nice to see in other countries that they have this kind of like, it's always good, kind of like the low bar is extremely high,
yeah,
in a way that you just don't get when you get a McDonald's burger or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
One thing I love to do when I'm traveling too is just like enjoy the street food. Like
yeah,
there's certain constraints around what you can do, like in a cart on a street, but like go to the Middle East
yeah,
or France or just various places. Like street food is fucking awesome. Like there might be
yes,
some bread, there might be some meat, but
yeah.
like yeah, just get that everywhere.
Yeah, like every nation has their version of like savory inside of a dough pocket and possibly fried.
Yeah.
Like, and it's always different and it's always amazing. Like you could write a book on just that. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of like looking into the future of video games. Um, where we're on PS5 right now, the Xbox Series X and S. Um, what are things that you feel like we're still limited by, but looking forward, like when this finally is able to be done, like it's going to be so much cooler. What are advancements that you're looking forward to in video games?
I mean, we talked a little bit before about how AI is going to improve render quality pretty substantially, just from kind of what amounts to noise reduction and upscaling alone. And I would say that NVIDIA is probably going to become pretty ascendant in the coming years. So buy NVIDIA stock, maybe.
Yeah,
But don't,
it's
uh,
probably still good advice. Had you taken that
yeah,
like 6 years ago, it would have been great advice.
yeah.
It's
It would have
probably
been
still
better, but buy it back then. That's really the right time. Um, but that's all true. The thing that's interesting to me is more how the Chat GPT style LLM AI um, is set to create a entirely different sort of game than any one of us has ever experienced, where everything and every person that you interact with that's an NPC in a game has a motivation, a thing that they're actively doing, and a reaction to you, and information about the world that's limited, but also might be more than what you know. Like all of those things in combination. If you just like, the core limitation is like you play Skyrim and any interaction is limited to the amount of text that a designer could commit to that one character. That's
yeah,
your decision tree in relationship to that character. It's going to be static. It can't change. You might come back with some item that unlocks some additional branching conversation tree, but the reality is that it is extremely limited, and we're about to crack that nut where it will just be like, okay, I need a villager, and maybe they don't like the city guard that much, and they might show you how to get in if you talk to them the right way, and that's it. And then the player is like, "Hey, how's it going? What do you do for?" You're like, you could chat them up. You could
yeah,
literally chat them up, and if you do it right, you get them to be like, "Yeah, fuck those guards. We're getting you in tonight." And then it happens in the game, and you go do the thing. But it was like the conversation was unscripted, and it was like the AI had enough information about its character and enough savvy to deliver convincing dialogue all up and down the chain, and then in the end it can make a change that actually has gameplay relevance to it. Like, that doesn't exist now, but none of the parts that would be required to make that exist are missing at the moment. So
yeah. And that makes me wonder if like the new job of a narrative designer in the near future will be around kind of like putting bumpers on like you're not going to
Yeah,
like write the dialogue for maybe a little bit for an NPC, but you're going to put constraints around like, what are this guy's motivations, and he probably shouldn't, like talk about real world politics stuff
yeah,
that.
absolutely. I was just thinking it's like I don't you go to World of Warcraft and ask an orc what he thinks about Joe Biden. That seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
There actually is a kind of solve for that already exists, which is that basically you train one of these models with a huge all the lore. Let's say it was World of
yeah,
Warcraft. So World of Warcraft has got like an encyclopedia amount of lore. It's all considered canon on some level. Like it's undisputed, but it's a lot of it. And you just say, "Hey, model, read all this stuff and only give interpretations and answers based on within the scope of what you read in here." So
interesting.
you don't for the reality of your response, you don't know more than what's in here. And that actually is the biggest bumpers I think you can put on stuff to keep it from saying crazy shit.
Yeah, I mean that almost eliminates the need for bumpers because you've
It is the bumper.
contained their knowledge domain. I think
Yeah.
of Baldur's Gate 3 too, which I've been playing lately, and like there's so many books and lore that people have written that I'm like, I'm gonna sell that for gold. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of trying to get through the game, so I'm not reading it all and taking it in. I'm interested in it, but like, yeah, if that could, that's a great, that's interesting. Like, yeah, if that could be the sort of like narrative training model for the AI, that's crazy. Here's another one for you too, kind of related. I've been following my buddy Yanni out of Finland, I believe. He's making a game. I think it's called Bit Magic now, and they're taking it like to a next level where the prompt is in engine. You type, I want a gun that shoots teddy bears, and like a fucking it occurs in the engine, and the bullets are teddy bears, and like so they're sort of building some of those workflows like into a real-time game experience. And yeah, like there's text to image, there's text to video, there's deep faking, there's text to models now where you can type in like, I want a chipmunk with glasses, smoking a cigar and a top hat.
Yep.
And it'll essentially make a photo, and then from camera angle and it'll like essentially like photogrammetry the thing, and now you've got a model of that can then go into the engine.
Yeah, I've been playing around with that. I checked that out a couple weeks ago. The Lu- Lumina, Luma,
Yeah,
and they seem to be at the head of the game. It seems like the limiting factor on text to models is that, unlike images, the databases of 3D models is like massively smaller. If you think about it, like the world is generating a million photographs a day, but it's not generating a million 3D models a day. So that the Luma Labs thing, they have. It's funny how they did it. It's like a case study in like elegant business design, because they have one side that says use our phone app and scan anything you want, and we'll give you the content back for free. Um, and it's this huge value proposition for hobbyists and modelers alike. And at the same time, what's really happening is they're saying, please give us all the data, and we're going to use it to
yeah,
emulsify to create this generative 3D asset thing, which is, as far as I can tell, kind of best in market at the moment. But yeah, that stuff is like that's kicking off in 2025. Mark my words. Like,
yeah.
and
And
so if
then
you're a 3D modeler right now, I think you got to at least play around with that stuff, because it's gonna affect the job for sure.
yeah, and I projecting the future a little bit. It's going to be a little minute before that advances to a state. Then like there's rigging and animating a thing, and like that's all to come. but like it's going to be baby steps, right? We're gonna like individual assets, and then like combining them is sort of like a next step. But
Yep.
like, yeah, this is an exciting future.
It's an exciting future. With every efficiency comes a kind of collapsing of work, but I don't think that that means that there's a reduction in the need for people. It's just that it's growth. Like, you can do more with less people, so you can do more, with the
Yeah.
same people. And yeah, like you said, like animation is also getting worked over a bit with kind of like AIs that analyze mocap and synthesize new mocap and the crazy stuff that I'm sure you've heard of people talk about the simulation theory before, right? I don't know if you're a proponent of that.
I don't
um,
know. Tell me more.
Oh well, this is the broadest topic, that the world that we live in
Oh,
right
is the
now
simulation?
is a matrix style simulation. We're not actually experiencing base reality. It sounds like a kind of religion for atheists to me, but regardless, like when you hear about what we're doing to train AIs, it's exactly like that. What would be being done to us?
Yeah.
Like in essence, it's the crazy thing is that they'll be like, okay, we need to create convincing dynamic animations of a sword fighter that could be attacked from any angle and get knocked over and react and get himself up authentically and stuff. And we don't want to record mocap for everything. So what we're going to do is like,
Here's some DNA on Earth.
yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I buy it. I could be a result of that, I guess. But
Oh man,
they're
are they?
tuning for some very weird outcomes with the simulation. Is all I can say.
Wow. Yeah.
But
Are
yeah,
the?
like that thing. The cool thing is like you can train something that has no idea how to walk in real time, but it takes like a million years in real time to do. So you can take that simulation and just speed it up to the point where that million years takes place over a weekend. And experientially by the AI, they experienced that whole million years. Theoretically, there's nothing there, but eventually there will be. So eventually we'll be working with things that are on some level conscious, and we'll still be playing around with their time frame in that way. And they'll just experience it as having lived 1,000 years, but to us it'll just be like whatever. And that's when we become gods. Yeah, that's it. That's how we become gods. I'm ready. I want to live long enough to see that happen. That's all.
Yeah. Oh my God. Mr. Rich Smith, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a blast. I love you, and
We're gonna be gods, DJ.
we're gonna be gods. We're gonna do it. Before we close out, I just want to thank the team, the Architects of Imagination team, Martika, Ibarra, our executive producer. Follow us on all the socials. We're on. I can be found on Twitch on undertone_DJ, on Twitter at undertone. Rich, do you have any socials you want to shout out?
No. I don't really. I'm a
Good.
I'm a private man, I suppose, but you could probably find me on Facebook if you want to say hi.
Right on.
But yeah, big shout out to DJ for being a badass and sticking around and remembering who I am after a couple years. We gotta get together in person and hang out again, DJ. Next time
Yeah,
you're in
man.
LA for sure.
Are you going to be? Well, I'll be in LA for the VES Awards late February, and then I'll be up in San Francisco March for GDC. Are you going to GDC this year?
I decided to pass. I didn't know what I would do there really, so I kind of thought I might not.
Well, I'll tell you what. When I'm there for the VES Awards next month, come meet me at Salsa and Beer because I have to go there every time.
Oh yeah, dude, salsa and beer for the ultimate nostalgia win for sure.
Dude, I fucking love that place.
Yeah, it's really good. I can imagine the salsas right now in my head. There's like the green one,
Oh,
there's
the
the
orange
red
one.
one.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Good talking to you, DJ.